everyone, welcome back to Build. I'm your host, Brittany Jones Cooper. Nothing is as it seems, and yet everything is as it seems in Slave Play. In the play, writer Jeremy O. Harris rips apart history to shed new light on the nexus of race, gender, and sexuality in 21st century America. Critics are raving about this provocative and thought-provoking play, and personally, it's unlike any theater experience I've ever had. Please help me welcome Jeremy O. Harris. How you doing today?
I'm good.
Good.
It's like there's a lot of kind words about a really scary play. So.
Well, it is a scary play, but it's also like so many things. And in the play, there's a character who has sometimes an issue finding her words, and that's almost how I feel about it. Because after watching it, I just was thinking and feeling so many things, and I think that's so rare. So what you've done is really, really special. How does it feel that something that you've created and that is so personal to share it with people?
I mean, it feels. I tweeted a thing about this yesterday because it's like it's like we did it at school last year and that
Yale?
Yeah, at Yale, and that was a gift unto itself because I saw the impact of the play in sort of our small community. But like when all your friends are talking about it, that's one thing. But when now like there's 200 people every night who get to see it and are taking these conversations that I wanted to engender conversation with this play, right? But now I feel like I can't. I want to be in all of the conversations and I can't. It's like you're in a group project and your teacher has split you guys all up, and you're like, oh no, I want to be in that group over there and hear what they had to say.
And I want you to describe it, but for me, it very much explored how our very complex racial history as a country is so much a part of our current trauma for so many people. That sort of is what I took away from it. But how would you describe the play to people?
Yeah, I think that I was saying to I've been saying about this play since I started writing it that like there's a scar in our country that we pretend like doesn't exist, and we like think we can ignore this like major wound that's there, and I think that like if we ignore a wound or a scar for too long, like keep putting makeup on it, like you forget. You become like disassociated from yourself. So I want to associate us back with ourselves and like have a different conversation about this past that we carry with us all the time.
And somehow you were able to do it with so much humor. What was that decision? Because you're tackling some very heavy themes and topics, but at least for the first half, you're laughing a lot.
Yeah.
So what was your thought process behind that?
I mean, I think, so Sarah Kane's one of my favorite writers. Like, I love Sarah Kane. But I feel like Sarah Kane's humor is so abject that, like, Americans are like, what is this? And I think that, like, and I think what she was working with was, like, looking at gender and, like, mental illness and, like, wanting us to see, like, the sort of putrid nature of like what we've done with that over millennia. She just punched you in the face with it, and I was like, I don't think Americans like to be just punched in the face. Like I think you had to sort of like give some honey to Americans and then punch them in the face. And so I think I'm doing that a little bit with the play. I'm like, here's a lot of honey, and it opens you up, right? Like it opens you up to a different idea. When you're laughing, and then you can it's like Richard Pryor or like all these amazing comedians who have like a social lens inside of their comedy. I think slave play allows people to like actually hear the thing that's being said because they're laughing for so long.
Yeah. And then they have to think about, why is that funny? Why am I laughing? Is that okay? I'm uncomfortable. Should I be uncomfortable? Like there's so many emotions that you go on in this play. And we talked about some of the themes. So the first one I want to explore with you is the idea of whiteness.
Yes.
And I'm in these conversations with my friends all the time defining like what is whiteness, what is privilege? And you were able to really, I think, tackle it in a really interesting way with your characters. So why was that something that you wanted to kind of help kind of define and clarify for people?
Yeah, it's really funny. After the Yale production, we got rehearsal reports, and some man like walked out of the theater with his wife, and he's like, "Well, what is whiteness?" And I was like, and he was like really angry, and that was like in the rehearsal report, it's like something an audience had said, and I think that's really great because I think that like something we don't confront is that like our construction as like black bodies in America, your construction as a woman, my construction as a man, are all like constructions. These were like made by both history, by narrative, by all these different things, and the one space we haven't investigated deeply is like what is the construct of whiteness in relationship to the construct of blackness, the construct of Asianness, the construct of all these different identity groups. And so I think that like I wanted to put a mirror up to that actively, so that like especially in a theater where like the majority of the audience is going to be like wealthy and white, I wanted them to actually look at themselves and say like what constructed me and like put me here.
Yeah. And really having to know that even if they do feel other, that they still have that privilege that other people don't have and don't even
Completely.
have access to, which the way you framed that was just genius, honestly. Another thing you really look and explore is colorism. And when somebody is biracial, their identity and how conflicting that can be. Again, why was that something? Because again, that's something that we like to skate over and pretend that
Yeah.
it's not a problem.
Yeah. I said that in one of the stage directions for the play, it says like slave play could also be a color play. It's a shade play. We're looking at a lot of different shades. Like what happens if Gary isn't, if Gary isn't, in the words of Toni Morrison, blue black, but is like black black. Like what changes about, like how does that change the room or the landscape of the play, and our understanding of this character. And I think that like with racism, like the thing that's really important is that like most of like colonialization was built on the back of anti-blackness. So like the darker you are in any country basically that you visit, like the worse off your life is going to be. So when you go to India, like the darkest people there usually are treated the worst. When you go to like
America.
yeah, exactly, everywhere you go. So I think that like you can't think about race and like the perils of colonialism and like the traumas of colonialism without looking at colorism.
And also at the person and how then they define themselves and how society defines them and how a lot of the times that's very different.
Completely.
It's a different experience for them. You also take a real serious look at anxiety and mental health in the Black community. And you do it again in this really profound way where she's not necessarily able to verbalize it, but she knows that she has these anxieties and she doesn't even really understand where they come from in that root. So is that something that you have a personal experience with?
Yeah, I mean, I think that being Black in America, like I think everyone is like is constantly anxious, you know what I mean, and like constantly feels crazy, right? So like, what do you do with that? What do you do with the fact that like growing up where I grew up in a small town in Virginia, with family members who were born from like slaves and sharecroppers and then worked in factories. And like we're also people who are like, oh, we don't need to get mental health counseling at all. Like we're fine. It's like no, like there are traumas from your days, from our entire lives we haven't unpacked. And then I was this kid who like at 12 got told I needed to see a therapist, and that changed everything, right? Because my mom actually was like, oh, maybe you should. And I think
Really rare and really special.
it's really rare.
Yeah.
And I think that now that we're having these really amazing, like now that like Insecure talks about like Black mental health and like, every rapper is like, I'm in like therapy now. It's like, oh, this is good. So I think that like it's a part of a conversation that hasn't been had in like the greater culture, that is just starting to be had in the greater cultural conversation about Blackness and the traumas that are in the micro of the mind that I think are really important.
You talk about the micro of the mind, and those were the parts that really make you shift in your seat a little bit during the play, because even when the characters are dealing with their desires and what they crave and what they want, and it feels really taboo to even admit it, and they have a hard time admitting it, and it's just like this constant conflict that's internal and so interesting to watch.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so
do you not feel like it's interesting to watch just like couples in general? I think couples in general are like the most interesting. I like watching bodies together. Like even looking down at you guys and seeing like the different body language that you guys are like all having with the people next to you. It's just like it's tearing me up a little bit. It gets me really excited.
yeah, and I think especially when they're couples and then interracial couples and you add all the different layers in there, it's really interesting. And you use sex as a way to explore those dynamics and those power dynamics, which, guys, it's a very sexy play. It's got a little R rating on it, right?
Yes.
So there's moments where you push, and I'm like, how far is he gonna go? And you always nailed it. Like you didn't go too far, and you kept it where it wasn't over sexualized, and it was like the perfect. You were explaining a dynamic. So how did you know how far to push it?
I think it's just. I think when you've watched as many movies as I've watched you, or read as many plays, I think it's just like it's natural. Like the first act I wrote in over a weekend, and I wrote it in like basically like 2 sittings. And I stopped. I was like, and that's the end of the first one, and I haven't touched it really since then. And it's been exactly that. Because I think that you have an internal clock of how much you want certain things to happen or how long certain things are going to go on. And then like Act 2, I wrote over the breast of like a week. And it was just like I knew how long I wanted to sit in that world. So I think it's just like I feel really lucky that a play that like is trying as many things as it's trying and working in so many different paradigms is like connecting to people, because all the things it's trying and all the paradigms it's shifting and moving through within are paradigms that excite me. And like I thought it was only going to be exciting to me and my friend Maxwell, who I told the entire idea of the play to. And people are liking it like that, and like that's crazy.
And how personal is it? Because I read something you wrote for Vice about decolonizing your desire, and then the character Gary is kind of dealing with those same conflicts.
Yeah.
So is there a lot of you in Gary and in this play?
Well, I don't know that Gary is the character that I feel the most connected to. I think I'm connected to like, one of the things I told our actors is that like, listen, like this play is very funny, but I'm not making fun of anyone in it, because like I have been every single character in this play, like including Alana at some point in my mind. Like I'm such a Gemini, I'm a double Gemini that like there are literally 8 people in my head talking all the time. And so one of the things about the play is that like it's a representation of like my entire life lived in America, right? And my entire life growing up in Virginia. And in a lot of ways, like, even though I'm incredibly verbose, I feel like a lot of connection to Kanisha. Like, even though I very much know what my racial identity is, like, I feel really connected to Philip, because, like, I grew up in, like, a very specific set of circumstances. Yes. So, but yeah, I think that one of the things that I talk a lot about was that, like, I felt like sort of kidnapped by white supremacy, like, you know, like at a very young age, because I was like put into a very elite private school in Virginia, and shout out to Candace Owen Williams, because she's coming to see the play tonight, which is amazing. She's phenomenal. She's this phenomenal drama teacher, and she taught me a lot. But I was one of the only Black kids at that school. And even before that, when I was in public school, I was the only Black kid in all the gifted and talented classes. And so I was socialized to like see my worth in my relationality to white people. And I think a lot of Black people, especially Black people who end up in like schools like Yale or spaces like this, have that same relationship. And I think that over the last like 5 years, I've been trying to like unpack what that means and how I can like get back to a different version of myself, or process what that life lived has been.
Right, and being a queer Black man in these predominantly white spaces too, you're also trying to figure out where you fit in even more, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And that seems to have inspired a lot of your art.
Yeah.
So is that how you are able to sort of unpack, you said, is just writing it?
Yeah. I mean, I think for a long time I thought acting was going to be my way, but like because the identities of Black, queer, and like Southern and poor don't exist like as readily available as you would like them to, to embody. I had to start writing those things so I could embody them and like create space for other people to embody those things too.
When did you start writing? When did you write your first play?
I wrote my first play by accident in college for because I was an actor and they needed us to bring in a scene, and I hated everything that I was looking at, so I just wrote a play. And I did it, and they were like, "Oh my God, this play's so great! Like, where's it from?" And I was like, "Oh, I wrote it." And then I got like in trouble for writing a play. And they're like, "You're not allowed to do that." And then when I was cut from drama school, they were like, "We think you might be a writer." And I was like, "You're lying! I'm not a writer." But that play was published in like the DePaul like literary magazine, which was really cool.
And did you not feel connected because you felt like those voices didn't reflect your own experience? Or what was
the play?
The original, the ones that you were reading.
I think it wasn't even that. It's just like I wanted to stand out in school, and I eat this coat right now. Like I like standing out.
Which I'm going to borrow. He said I could afterwards.
But no, I wanted to stand out, and I knew I wouldn't be able to put my best foot forward if I was doing an August Wilson scene. Like that just like wasn't there's like maybe like 3 August Wilson characters I could play, but like they generally weren't the thing. And like I could maybe have done the African guy in, I can't remember his name, in Raisin in the Sun, but like his character, like I'm bad at accents, you know, so I didn't want to do that. And then there's like, and then like I knew if I brought in like an Adrienne Kennedy play, my teacher would have been like, "What?" So I was like, I'm gonna bring in a play that's like realism, but it's gonna be like for me, you know, and it's gonna be like a 19-year-old Black gay guy, and he's gonna do this and blah blah. And yeah, they weren't feeling it. They were feeling it until I told them I wrote it, and then they weren't feeling it.
So who are some of your literary inspirations?
God, so many.
Right.
There's so many. Yeah, well, I think Adrienne Kennedy's play last year was like probably my favorite play, like of the last forever. Alicia Harris is like amazing. Brandon Jacobs Jenkins. I'm like such a huge fan of Tony Kushner and Edward Albee. Like I like the thing that's is we're getting to that space now where like people are going to start writing about this play, and one of the things that I have a lot of anxiety about is like how people frame like Black writers, female writers. It's like the lineage of Annie Baker shouldn't just be like every white woman who's written a play before her, right? And I hope that the lineage of me is not every Black person who's ever written a play before me, because while that's important and like so many Black writers have inspired me, I've also been super inspired by like Raina Werner Fassbinder and Edward Albee and Tony Kushner and Doug Wright, like all these people who've done like these crazy disparate works that like I've found along the way. Like Paul Thomas Anderson is like I feel like most of my monologues are inspired by the fact that I watched Magnolia 85 times in high school. Like it was Magnolia and The Dreamers. So like that explains a lot of the play.
I love that your inspiration comes from so many different places. And again, you can feel that, and you can feel like the research you've done and how well read you are. I feel like when you watch and read what you've done. So I can feel that. On that note, you received the 2018 Kennedy Center Rosa Parks Playwriting Award and the Lorraine Hansberry Playwriting Award. Guys, give it up. Those are huge honors. How does that feel? Because, you had these very humble beginnings and you've reached this level where your art is being recognized.
Yeah, it feels crazy. I mean, I still don't really know what to do about that. And also, like, that was such an affirming moment because two phenomenal women, Black women, like, were the judges for those awards. Kristen Greenidge and I'm such a bad. I can't remember the name of the other woman who gave it, but to win these awards for a work that like I think has a lot of elements that like I'm like one of the main characters in my play is a Black woman, and I was raised by a Black woman, and my sister's a Black woman, and the people that are close to me in my life, I grew up in a weird coven of Black women, and like we're in a time now where people. Where I think it's very important that people are like challenging the notion that men are writing characters that are outside of their identity groups. And so to be affirmed that like this play is working in sort of a feminist paradigm, in a paradigm that's like in the lineage of Rosa Parks and Lorraine Hansberry possibly, was just like, fuck yes. You know what I mean? Like that's really cool. And it's still like there's still a lot of work and there's still a lot of questions that like I want to answer. So like I also don't want like me winning these awards to feel like a stop from like doing the work of like deep investigation of both my own psyche and like this collective psyche that like I engage with in a theater.
Yeah, and I did feel when I left like I had some homework to do. Like I felt like I needed to read some more and like journal some more and just have these conversations. And you actually have an opportunity for people to help unpack things after the show. There was like an opportunity for people to talk with cast and kind of process some of it. Yeah. Why was that important for you to have as a part of the play?
Yeah, I mean, so like when Emma Weinstein, who directed at Yale, brought her mom to see the play. Her mom was like, "This play is amazing," and her mom Jessica Litwalk, who's an amazing playwright as well. And she was like, "But my one criticism is that you don't have any place for us to talk." And I was like, "Well, I want people to talk. Everyone should talk." She was like, "There needs to be I demand a talk back every night after the show. Like, if you do this again, you have to have a talk back every night." And I was like, "I can't do that. Like, my body wouldn't be able to handle that." But like when we were throwing out ideas, I was like, "We need to create a facility, some sort of salon, or like where there's drinks and people can like hang out and like just like they'll get like a free cocktail." And they'll just be able to talk. And the theater was like, "We can't afford that. Like, we can barely afford a set." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." Yeah, exactly. And so then they're like, "But we will like reach out to some people to facilitate, you know?" And my worry was that like if it was like done in a certain light, it would make everyone feel like we were saying like, "You need to like this place." And it's like, I was like, I understand what I'm making and I understand what we're doing, but it's not like, it's still a play that I think is like rigorous enough that like it's not just like provocation for provocation's sake. And so I didn't want it to be like feel like a space like that. And what it's turned into is like a really lovely place where people are just like talking and like excited to talk, and they're like, "Can I get a reading list?" And I'm like, people are gonna read like Sadia Hartman now and like Jennifer Nash because like I mentioned them. Like that's really cool. Yeah.
You're gonna listen to work, just like on repeat, just trying to process what the hell that meant in the play, which is what I did afterwards. Music, you use modern music in the play at times that maybe don't seem modern. And that's the hardest thing I had to kind of figure out, like, why.
Yeah.
So without giving too much away, why was it important for you to, I think I figured it out, but.
No, I mean, I think that like, first of all, like Rihanna's work is one of the greatest songs of like the last 10 years. Like, not even kidding. Like, I think it's like a true pop masterpiece. And I also think that there's something in the fact that like it demanded that like white audiences and like pop music audiences like listen in a different way. You know what I mean? That like I thought tracked to the play. Because like, you know, like when she pulls out the patois in that song, there are a lot of people who are like, I don't know what she's saying, and yet they still kept listening. And I think that like that's a great metaphor for how like I hope that like a predominantly white audience like leaves the play thinking about how they experience Black people. Like, I think that when a Black person speaks to a white person, or a person of color speaks to a white person and says like, this is my experience, and the white person doesn't understand, perhaps instead of saying I don't understand, explain it to me again. They should just sit back and listen. And I think that's what the play's ultimately trying to get people to learn how to do. Sit back and listen to a history that maybe is different from their own.
That is a good place to stop. That is exactly yes, that was perfect. I think now we should go to the audience for some questions. Who do we have first?
Hi. So you pack so much into this play. Is there anything that you had to cut for time or pacing that you wish you could have kept?
No, the one thing we cut was an intermission. Everything else is like, you know, the only thing we've added, we added a lot of things to it, but Robert O'Hara, who's a genius, and like another one of the writers that inspired me. Like, I was emailing Robert when I was 18 years old.
He directed.
And he directed the play, which is like one of those very rare and insane things to happen, because like that just doesn't happen, where a young Black person who's queer gets to be like mentored in their first play by an older Black person who's also queer, who inspired them. But anyway, he was like, Jeremy, the first thing we're cutting is this intermission. And I was like, why? He's like, well, why do these white folks get a break? The slaves didn't. And I thought that was hilarious. So, yeah.
A question too, the mirror that's in the room, I won't give too much away about how it's used, but was that part of something that you wrote in the play, or is that something that he brought in his directing to it?
That was something that the genius Clint Ramos brought. And it was sort of it was both like, you know, I don't know if the design would have had this in it had we not gotten the one thing we wanted, but the one thing I really wanted from the Yale production was that like, I wanted the audience to be able to like interact with each other in some way. And I knew that because we did it in a 3/4 thrust, and I was like, this is like a forum. You know, like this is actually like, it's like a message board or something, this play. And I was like, I want people to be able to like be having dialogue with each other as the play is happening. And so we were like, it has to be in the round. It has to be in the round. And the theater was like, we can't afford that. And also the theater had like just lost their production manager. So like it was just gonna be really difficult. And we're like, how are we gonna do it? And Clint was like, I have an idea. And then Clint brought us a set, and it's truly, I think, it's my favorite set I've ever seen. And like, I love him because I know that we are balling on a budget right now, and it's fucking cool. I mean, he's a Tony Award winning costume designer, and now people are gonna actually see him in like with the weight of his like set design that I think that a lot of people might have missed before.
It added something you didn't even know you needed. It
Yeah.
really was. And I loved watching people's reactions in the mirror. Some of them are like, is it okay to laugh at that?
Yeah.
You know? And it's like, yeah, it's fine. Later. Next question.
Hi. For a playwright, I always wanted to know how long does it take for you to get what do you call it? Like the many times you finish your draft until you're at a satisfying place. How many times did it take for you to get to that moment?
It's really funny. So I finished writing this play at the end of my first year of grad school, and I'm very protective. As soon as I come up with an idea or come up with a title, the idea usually falls into my brain. It's like lightning. It's like really cool. And I'm saying this like I've written like 1,000 plays. Like every time I write, no, I've written like 4 plays. So like, but anyway, the 4 times I've written plays, like I have a title, and then I'm like, here's the idea, and then I write it pretty quickly. But it's after like I write when I write it, it comes quickly. But from the moment I have the idea to the moment I'm actually starting to put pen to paper, it's like 9 months, because I like to read a bunch, I like to talk to people, and I like to cheat. I like to write my play before. So I'll be like, oh my God, I have this great idea for a play. Like, do you want to hear it? It's called Slave Play. Like, in the first act, this happens. In the first act, and then I watch how long they're interested. And when they start losing interest, I like change it, or like I edit it in the moment there. So then when I actually want to write the play, it just comes right out. And when I finished this play, I was like, okay, it's done. I sent it to my teacher, and I sent it to my agent at the time, and just to like see what people thought of this like rough draft. And he was like, I'm sending this out now. So it's like sometimes people don't give you a choice. Sometimes people are just like, we see the thing, and you're doing it. So yeah. Thank you.
It's like lightning. And last question?
So I was wondering if there were any like big challenges or differences between, you know, staging the play in like a university setting and then staging it here in the city.
Yeah. I mean, I think, how do I say this? I think that the difference is that like a university setting is school, you know? And a part of being in school in general is that like you lose a lot of autonomy, you know, like, you know, people are literally being paid to people are being paid to like, even if it's subconsciously, they're being paid to like not treat you as an equal, because they're getting paid and you're not, you know what I mean? Like generally you're paying them. So like the power is already imbalanced, right? And whereas like in the theater, like I'm the person getting paid. And also like the power balance. They're like we there were 5,000 things we could have chose from, and we picked yours is one of 4 we chose. And so you're treated like an equal or even better than an equal, and I think it makes the process really, really exciting and really fun right now. But like I think that New York Theater Workshop is one of those rare places where there is not the same sort of hierarchies as there are in other places. Like one of the first things Jim told me is like, I am a white gay man of a certain age, and I don't know what it's like to be a young black playwright. He's like, so if I ever tell you something that you don't agree with or like, just throw it out. You don't have to listen to it. And that's the sort of like relationship that few university settings have.
This play has been so well received, and I'm happy to know that it's not going to be your last. I know you're working on Daddy for next year with Alan Cummings, right?
Yeah, Alan Cumming, Hari Neff, Tommy Dorfman, Charlene Woodard, who's like a genius, Kyun Kim, and Ronald Pete is starring in it. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too because I want to continue to see your works. I really think you are an important voice in theater in this generation, and so I will come and support you. And you guys need to go check this out. If you haven't, make sure you go see Slave Play now through December 30th at the New York Theater Workshop. Give it up for Jeremy O. Harris.
Thank you.